Bill Gates's population reduction comments weren't jokes, they were the plan. Whose senior medical officer Dr. Jennifer Walsh's leaked classified files proved that the Gates Foundation had been distributing sterilization chemicals in developing countries for 15 years. Under the mask of charity, human population engineering was being conducted. The first indication that something was fundamentally wrong with the Gates Foundation's global health initiatives came from an unexpected source: a routine quality control analysis conducted by the World Health Organization in late 2022. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a senior medical officer in WHO's Vaccine Safety and Quality Division, was reviewing batch reports from vaccination programs funded by the Gates Foundation when she discovered anomalies that would ultimately expose one of the most sophisticated population control operations in human history. Dr. Walsh had spent 18 years working in global public health, including 12 years with the WHO overseeing vaccine safety protocols in developing nations. Her expertise in pharmaceutical analysis and international health program oversight made her uniquely qualified to detect irregularities in vaccine composition and distribution patterns. But nothing in her extensive experience had prepared her for what she discovered in the Gates Foundation's program data. The initial red flag appeared in fertility statistics from regions where Gates Foundation vaccination programs had been most active. Dr. Walsh noticed a consistent pattern of declining birth rates in areas that had received intensive vaccination campaigns, but the decline was far more dramatic than could be explained by improved healthcare, education, or economic development alone. The correlation was too strong and too consistent across multiple countries and cultures to be coincidental. Areas with the highest Gates Foundation vaccine coverage showed the most significant drops in fertility rates, often beginning within 12 to 18 months of intensive vaccination campaigns. The pattern held across sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, and parts of Latin America where the foundation had focused its efforts. Dr. Walsh's initial assumption was that the fertility decline was an indirect result of improved health outcomes. Healthier populations often naturally experience reduced birth rates as child mortality decreases and family planning becomes more accessible. But when she analyzed the specific demographics and timing of the fertility changes, the patterns didn't match known models of demographic transition. The decline in fertility was happening too quickly and was too uniform across different populations to be explained by natural demographic changes. Moreover, the fertility reduction was occurring even in populations where other health indicators hadn't improved significantly, suggesting that the vaccination programs were having direct effects on reproductive capability rather than indirect effects through general health improvement. Dr. Walsh decided to conduct a more detailed analysis of the vaccine compositions used in Gates Foundation programs. Using her access to WHO laboratory facilities, she began testing stored samples from various vaccination campaigns to determine if there were any undisclosed components that might explain the fertility effects she had observed. The laboratory analysis revealed the presence of compounds that were not listed in the official vaccine formulations provided to WHO by the Gates Foundation. These compounds included synthetic hormones and chemical agents that were known to affect reproductive function, but their presence in the vaccines had never been disclosed to health authorities or the populations receiving the vaccinations. Most disturbing was the discovery of compounds specifically designed to impair fertility in both men and women. The chemicals were sophisticated and targeted, designed to interfere with reproductive hormones and cellular processes in ways that would reduce fertility without causing obvious immediate health effects. The compounds were present in concentrations that would be effective at reducing reproductive capability while remaining below levels that would trigger obvious adverse reactions. Dr. Walsh realized that she had uncovered evidence of a deliberate population control program disguised as humanitarian vaccination efforts. The Gates Foundation was using its global health initiatives as a cover for distributing fertility-reducing agents to populations that had not consented to such treatment and were unaware that their reproductive capability was being deliberately compromised. The scope of the program was staggering. Dr. Walsh's analysis revealed that fertility-reducing compounds had been included in vaccination programs reaching over 200 million people across more than 30 countries over a 15-year period. The program represented the largest involuntary sterilization effort in human history, conducted under the guise of preventing infectious diseases. Dr. Walsh's investigation revealed that the population control program had been developed through a collaboration between the Gates Foundation, pharmaceutical companies, and government agencies interested in population reduction technologies. The program had its origins in concerns about global population growth and resource scarcity, but had evolved into a systematic effort to reduce fertility in specific populations without their knowledge or consent. The selection of target populations appeared to be based on a combination of factors including economic development levels, geographic accessibility, and existing healthcare infrastructure. The program focused primarily on populations in developing countries where birth rates were high and where international health programs could operate with less oversight than would be possible in more developed nations. The fertility-reducing agents used in the program were the result of years of research into reproductive biology and chemical contraception. The compounds were designed to be stable in vaccine formulations, effective at low doses, and difficult to detect using standard laboratory tests. They represented a sophisticated application of reproductive technology for population control purposes. Dr. Walsh discovered that the program had been implemented gradually, with fertility-reducing agents initially introduced in limited geographical areas to test their effectiveness and monitor for adverse reactions. As the program proved successful at reducing birth rates without generating significant attention or resistance, it was expanded to cover larger populations across multiple continents. The documentation revealed that Bill Gates had been personally involved in the development and oversight of the population control program. Internal communications showed that he had specifically requested research into methods for reducing global population growth through health interventions, and had provided funding for the development of the fertility-reducing compounds found in the vaccines. Gates's public statements about population reduction, which had often been dismissed as theoretical discussions about demographic trends, were actually references to active programs designed to achieve population reduction goals. His comments about using vaccines and healthcare to reduce population growth by 10 to 15% were not predictions about the effects of improved healthcare, but descriptions of deliberate population control interventions. The financial structure of the population control program was complex and designed to obscure its true purpose. Funding flowed through multiple foundation accounts and subsidiary organizations, making it difficult to trace the connection between population control research and vaccine distribution programs. The program was presented to pharmaceutical partners and government agencies as research into reproductive health and family planning, rather than as deliberate sterilization efforts. Dr. Walsh's investigation revealed that many of the healthcare workers involved in administering the vaccines were unaware of their true contents. The fertility-reducing agents were added during the manufacturing process by a small number of trusted personnel, and the modified vaccines were distributed through normal channels without additional documentation about their altered composition. The program included sophisticated monitoring systems to track the effectiveness of the population control interventions. Fertility rates, birth statistics, and demographic data from target regions were continuously analyzed to assess the impact of the fertility-reducing agents and to optimize their deployment in future vaccination campaigns. Dr. Walsh discovered that the program had achieved significant success in reducing birth rates in target populations. Areas that had received intensive vaccination campaigns with fertility-reducing agents showed fertility declines of 20 to 40% within 5 years of program implementation. The population control effects were often attributed to improved healthcare, education, or economic development, obscuring the true cause of the demographic changes. The revelation that global vaccination programs had been used for involuntary population control created an impossible ethical dilemma for Dr. Walsh. As a WHO medical officer, she was committed to protecting public health and ensuring the safety of international health programs. But exposing the population control program would likely undermine public confidence in vaccines and international health efforts, potentially causing significant harm to legitimate public health initiatives. Dr. Walsh also realized that revealing the Gates Foundation's population control activities would likely result in the destruction of her career and potentially put her personal safety at risk. The organizations involved in the program had vast resources and influence, and they would not hesitate to protect their interests by discrediting or silencing potential whistleblowers. The decision to go public with her findings was further complicated by the potential global implications of her revelations. The discovery that one of the world's most prominent philanthropists had been conducting involuntary sterilization programs could destabilize international health cooperation and potentially lead to the collapse of vaccination programs that provided genuine benefits to vulnerable populations. After months of internal struggle, Dr. Walsh decided that the public had a right to know about the population control program and that the practice of involuntary sterilization through vaccination was so fundamentally unethical that it had to be exposed regardless of the consequences. She began carefully documenting her findings and preparing to release information about the Gates Foundation's activities to investigative journalists and human rights organizations. The process of going public was complicated by the sophisticated security measures surrounding the population control program. Dr. Walsh's communications were monitored, and she had to develop covert methods for copying and transmitting classified documentation without alerting her supervisors to her activities. Working with international human rights organizations and investigative journalists, Dr. Walsh arranged for the simultaneous release of information about the Gates Foundation's population control program through multiple media outlets around the world. The revelation that vaccination programs had been used for involuntary sterilization created an immediate international crisis. The Gates Foundation initially denied the allegations, claiming that Dr. Walsh's findings were based on misinterpreted data and that no fertility-reducing agents had been included in their vaccination programs. But as additional evidence emerged from other sources, including former pharmaceutical researchers and healthcare workers, the Foundation was forced to acknowledge that unauthorized modifications had been made to some vaccine formulations. Bill Gates's personal response to the revelations was carefully crafted to minimize his apparent involvement in the population control program. He claimed that any fertility effects from vaccination programs were unintended consequences of improved healthcare and that he had never authorized the addition of fertility-reducing agents to vaccines. However, internal communications released by Dr. Walsh contradicted these claims and showed Gates's direct involvement in developing and funding the population control program. The exposure of the Gates Foundation's population control activities triggered investigations by multiple international organizations, human rights groups, and government agencies. The scope of the program and its impact on global fertility rates became the subject of extensive research and analysis by independent scientists and medical experts. Congressional hearings were held in the United States to investigate the Gates Foundation's activities and to determine the extent to which U.S. government agencies had been aware of or involved in the population control program. The hearings revealed complex relationships between the Foundation, pharmaceutical companies, and government health agencies that had facilitated the implementation of the sterilization program. International criminal courts began investigating whether the involuntary sterilization program constituted crimes against humanity under international law. The systematic targeting of specific populations for fertility reduction without their consent appeared to meet the legal definition of genocide under some interpretations of international criminal law. For the populations affected by the sterilization program, the revelation of the Gates Foundation's activities raised profound questions about informed consent, medical ethics, and the right to reproductive autonomy. Many individuals and families who had received vaccines containing fertility-reducing agents had been permanently affected in ways they had never consented to and had never been informed about. The long-term health consequences of exposure to the fertility-reducing agents remained unclear, as the compounds had never been properly tested for long-term safety in human populations. Medical experts warned that the affected populations might face unknown health risks for years or decades following their exposure to the experimental chemical agents. For Dr. Walsh personally, the decision to expose the population control program resulted in the end of her career with the WHO and ongoing legal and personal challenges from organizations seeking to discredit her revelations. However, her courage in exposing the program led to significant reforms in international health program oversight and new protections for populations participating in vaccination campaigns. The Gates Foundation population control scandal ultimately served as a watershed moment in understanding the potential for humanitarian programs to be used for covert political and social engineering purposes. It highlighted the need for transparency in international health initiatives and stronger protections for vulnerable populations who might be targeted for experimental interventions. The case also raised fundamental questions about the ethics of population control and the right of individuals and communities to make informed decisions about their reproductive health. The revelation that fertility reduction could be implemented through routine medical interventions without the knowledge or consent of affected populations demonstrated the need for robust oversight and accountability in global health programs. Most importantly, the scandal showed that protecting human rights and dignity in the modern world required vigilance not just against obvious forms of coercion, but against sophisticated medical and scientific interventions that could alter fundamental aspects of human biology and social organization under the guise of humanitarian assistance.